Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be starting a new series of videos that are specific to the maintenance procedures and practices on fishing reels, and I think it might be specific to spinning reels. And this is going to be a focus in on what you can do at home to keep your reels running smoothly. We're going to be going over a variety of topics that has to do with spinning reels, from old vintage stuff to some of the newer and later, the super models of fishing reels that they have out today, and what you can do with minimal tools, minimal time, minimal money, minimal effort to keep these running smoothly. See, there's a lot of information online that I've seen throughout the years that gives very conflicting views on, one, what is considered a good practice when you're cleaning your fishing reel, and what to take apart and what to clean and what to grease and what to oil. And the other thing is what your priorities are when you're inside the reel. See, there's a lot of things you can do in there that, while they may be beneficial to the health of the reel, they may not be at the top of the priority list when considering what needs to be maintained the most often and what's been used the hardest since the last time the reel was serviced, and what parts wear more than others and how they wear. And a basic understanding of the internals of one of these reels is really going to excel your understanding of how to clean them and how to keep them maintained. That's the first step you should always do, is do your research, get you a schematic for the reel. A schematic looks like this. It has all of the different parts and pieces of a particular reel. For instance, this is for a 112H pin, and it also has a parts list of all the parts with key numbers corresponding to the diagram and all of the part numbers and the part names. And with these numbers, you can go online and find cross references, and you can find a lot of older parts that may not be available as an OEM part. So, for instance, I'll go over a couple of the key pieces and parts that we may be talking about in this series. One thing that's really important to work on your reels, or at least to inspect regularly, is your drag, especially if you're catching fish and you're using your drag. These are some of the first parts to go in a reel. Mainly because they are some of the most delicate. And it's a sacrificial element designed to take friction and disperse it. Will also release heat, which if you've ever burned your hand on a hot spool after catching a big fish, then you know what I'm talking about. They are designed to take the forces of the nature of what you're doing with it, which is fighting a fish that's going to be taking line. You're going to take some of that line back, and it's going to be this exchange. And the entire reel, but specifically that drag, absolutely must be at its peak performance. And so we'll show you how to take all those drag washers out, how they work, what they do, and how to clean them and make sure that they're in good condition, and then to reinstall them back in your reel. And I'll go over a couple of different varieties of those drag systems as well. That way you guys get a clear picture. If you're doing yours and it looks a little bit different than mine, then at least some of the parts that I show you will be somewhat similar, and you can get a good idea of how it works. We're also going to talk about something that I don't think gets enough attention on YouTube, at least, and that's bearings. Now, what I'm holding isn't necessarily a bearing, but inside of this there are several. And a lot of reels out there, they will have a bearing just on side of the drive gear on either side, and they'll normally be ball bearings. There are normally bearings inside of the line roller, which allows it to move as line is coming in or going out of the reel. There's normally bearings down inside of the pinion gear along the anti-reverse clutch or whatever anti-reverse system that your reel has. Sometimes there's even bearings inside of the gear case down here on the transmission block, where it rolls up and down, carrying the shaft along with it. There's a lot of bearings in these, and they all have to be maintained. I'm going to show you how to take them out, where most of them will be, what most of them look like, show you how to flush them, and how to properly lubricate them when they go back into the reel. I'll give you a quick example as sort of a sneak peek to this series in this introductory video on some of the stuff we're going to cover. You see this line roller here. There's a little bit of corrosion on it. It still moves just fine, and there's nothing wrong with it per se. But we're going to go inside of it and take that bearing out and show you what it looks like. We're going to clean it back up and put it back inside. Okay, the first thing we're going to need is a big number 2 screwdriver. Doesn't have to be this big, but it's the one that I have on hand right now. We're going to undo the screw that holds this line roller together. Now everybody's probably seen the screw on the back side of these if you're familiar with a line roller. Now normally there's 5 or 6 pieces in here, so you definitely want to be careful as you're coming apart. What I'll do is I'll hold the bail down like this and let everything just sort of fall on top. And we're going to open that up. Now I'm going to zoom in on the side of this just so you can see what that looks like. It is all corroded and gross looking. Now we're going to clean that up. Take this off, and this is just the side race to your line roller. We'll set it aside. There is the roller itself, which seats over top of this piece, which is the bearing. And the bearing has 2 races, one that touches the inside post right here, and the other which is on the outside of the bearing, which rides along the inside of this roller. And this is what helps it keep turning nice and smooth. And as you can see, it works pretty good right now. The first thing I'm going to do is take some thin lubricant of some sort. In this case, we're going to use Aerocroil. And I'm going to go inside here and just flush that bearing really well. Generous amount, and spin that bearing around and work that oil into it. I'm using this product because it's really thin, and it's just a very viscous oil, and it will creep down inside of the bearings and lubricate them very well, remove any kind of foreign bodies or what have you. And then I'll load that again and just keep working it. Alright. Now for the roller, I'll use some of this same fluid here, and I'll just cover that up and give it a really good cleaning. I'm going to wipe it down with a rag to get some of the excess oil off of there. Same thing with this post and bearing that I oiled up. And then what I'm going to do, let me zoom out. You don't have to do this or go this far, but I've got this syringe with some 80 weight gear lube in it, and this is a lot thicker oil. It's going to stick around a lot longer than this Aerocroil will. That was just to clean some of the salt off of the bearing and things like that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this syringe and inject some of this oil into the bearing from the top side here before we put it back together. So let me zoom in and make sure we're going to stay focused here. Then I'm just going to take this needle. Now I have cut this needle so it's no longer sharp. It's not going to hurt me. And if you do something along the lines of this, you should do the same. Please be careful with your tools. So I've loaded that bearing up, and I'm just going to work that oil down into it as well. If you can see how I did that, there's almost a little shelf that's 90 degrees or so, and it's where the black post meets the side of the bearing. That's where I'm putting this fluid, and I'm doing that so that as it sits on this post and I turn that bearing, the surface tension of the oil sort of keeps it there, and when I turn the bearing, it works it down into the races. And what I'm going to do is just give it a quick breeze with the rag to catch any extra oil, because too much oil, just like in engines, is not always a good thing. In fact, it can be a bad thing and stall up this line roller. And here we have a little plastic washer inside of this side piece here. We're going to try to remove that. I'm going to take this little flat chisel tip here and just try to separate these two because they're pretty stuck together. Alright. I'm going to take some more Aerocroil here and just hit this piece that's really corroded, and then take a soft brass bristle brush. I'm going to clean some of the corrosion off of that. And the back side. Okay, another quick flush with the oil to remove some of this debris that we just loosened up. Just bathe it down, and then we're going to wipe it off really good with the rag, clean our work surface up a little bit. Wipe down our little white bushing there. Alright, now it's time to reassemble. Okay, so we're going to start with our bale assembly here with this bearing on it, which has been oiled with some of that heavyweight lube, and we're going to load our roller back on in the same direction that it went. And that's right over top of that bearing right there. So you can see it just rides nicely. That gives you a nice little place if you wanted to, before we leave it, right in here between the posts and the edges of the roller, to seat some more of this heavier weight gear lube, which there was some on the needle already, so I didn't even have to squeeze it. Again, you really don't want an abundance of oil down inside of these. You just want enough to keep it nice and lubricated. And then we have our white bushing, which will go right on top of the roller. And then we have the bushing that goes on top of that, again remembering the orientation that these had before. I'm going to give just a touch more oil on top of this, because where it rides, I'll show you in a second, there's going to be some friction there as well. So we're looking inside of here. It's not too bad. I'm just going to give it a touch of the Croil and come in with my soft brush. Brush it out real good. I'm just going to very, very gently kind of poke around in here to make sure that the corners are free of any buildup. And they are. Another douse of the oil. We're going to wipe that off. Okay, I'm going to set some 80 weight lube down inside of here, and then I'm going to turn this bale around, the assembly we just put back together, and I'm going to put it back into there where it went. And then from this back side, you notice that some of the oil got down inside of the holes where the screw goes. That's a good thing, so that'll make sure that no water can seep in there, at least for as long as the oil's there. So we're going to leave that, and we'll put the screw back in the hole where it goes. Remember to hand start your screws, especially when you're working with a fishing reel, because there's a lot of inside metal threads on these that, if you cross thread them, could severely damage some of these parts. So we're going to tighten that back up. Just, hand tight is good. Now we're going to go in here with this little pick and try to roll this around and just feel what kind of action. It's a little bit tighter than it was before, but that's only because before there was no lubrication in here.